start installing Linux. Now, as I said, you need to revisit my previous video on which is the best alternative, or what you'd actually use. For my case, I'll be using a virtual machine, that is VMware Workstation 6. Now, basically, all I need to do is, first of all, understand specs your machine has. And by this, you'll need to look at three things in mind. One, what disks memory do you have? By that, all I mean is you'll have to come here and see what how much space you have on your machine. Two, you'll have to check how much RAM you have available on your machine. In my case, I have 8 GB RAM as per my computer. And also number three, if your machine is capable of handling the kind of Linux distribution that you have. So the first thing is it 64-bit, is it 32-bit? Then later on, you'll also need to know how many cores your machine has actually. So those are the three things that you'll need to look at before you continue. Once you have sorted them out, the next thing is coming back and now working on what specs you have and how you're going to now monitor or work on that. So those are the three key things that you'll need to do before you continue. Create a new virtual machine. Then after that, just leave it as typical. Then after that, you'll need to select the disk where to install, or where you're getting the ISO from. So I'll come over here, browse, and get that. For me, it's on the desktop, so click on that and open. You'll notice very well that's going to pick and note what kind of it is. You'll notice it's actually Debian 9 point something, so you'll just leave it by default. Next, the location in which you're going to store it. This is where you actually change it if your drive C is normally not. If your drive C is full, choose a location where you have enough space. This is very important because normally you might find yourself in a scenario where you'd want to change your location of the location in which you're going to have your image stored. So this is where you do it. You can also change the name of your virtual machine over here. Let me call it Ubuntu. Similar to that. Now over here is where you choose your disk. I usually recommend it to leave by default because you're starting. It's usually recommended to actually leave everything by default, and if you have enough space, you can actually put this to 40, 60 or 80 GB based on what your use case is. So I'll leave it by default. Now from there, you'll come over here. I prefer you leave everything the way it is for now and click on finish, and it should appear on the left hand side of your screen. There you go. Now the next thing that you're now going to do is, that is just basic setup. The next thing is basically what everybody is going to experience. Now if you had taken your time and created a bootable image on your drive, or your what you call flash drive, this is now where we will actually converge. And this is what you'll need to do. You'll either power on your machine or power on your virtual machine. You should be able to actually turn on and make sure that your drive is inserted before you turn it on. And we should find ourselves in the same position where VMware starts. So this is similar to your boot process, and you'll be able to find yourself in this point. For those people who are using a computer, you can use the keys that are there. There are some machines that use F1, others use F4. to actually boot from that device or the flash drive that you've installed. It's usually necessary to actually make sure that you've configured your boot device, so, or where you're booting from. So in my case now, I'll come and continue, because this is where both me and you are going to converge. So the first thing is you'll need to select what are you going to language you're going to use. So in my case, I'll select English, and remember you have to also understand what English which keyboard you're using. In my case, I'm using the United Kingdom keyboard. Then after that, it will ask you, can you try to that. For my case, I'll just say no, and then UK, I'll just pick UK. And then from there's something that I would like to highlight over here. Basically, due to the fact that this is as an intro, we are going to basically just focus on installing basically what we have without actually configuring where the root folder will be, where the user folders will be stored, and where the swap, or what size of the swap we are going to use. So in our case, we are not going to really go into the nitty-gritties of that, because we're just basically installing so that we can start learning Linux. So it will need to retrieve some of the files, and let's wait for it to do that. Oh yeah, it will actually speed up. I'll speed this up for the sake of time. So over here, you'll come and change the name of your, let's say for example, your computer name. For my case, maybe I'll call it red dot. Timothy is my name. Account is Timothy. Over here, it's usually advisable to put a password, because for me it's just for test purposes. I'll use let's just see what you type in. Simple password, so that, because this is just password. So this is where, as I was saying, you can actually come and just use what we call guided use entire disk. But if you wanted to separate those trays, because as I said previously, there are instances where you'd want to manage where the user's files will be, where the root files will be, and where or how to actually allocate the swap and any other customization when it comes to where your drives will be. This is where you're going to do it. But for our case, we'll just move on with the guided that is use the entire disk. There are also these others based on the encryption and the file system that you'd want. For me right now, we're just going to stick to that. Then we're just going to press enter twice, and it should be able to continue. So press yes to change the state of your disk. Install the grab bootloader, which you just here it is. Install grab bootloader on a hard disk. So just press OK, and it should be able to install it, and I think we should be able to finish this part, and I think it's finished. As you can see over there, taskers to set. We're going to set all this, so continue, and there you go. It is going to reboot, and we will find ourselves in a position where we have completed, after a very long time, we have finally completed installing Linux. Boot up, let it boot up, and there you go. So the next lesson, we will be dealing with installing the basics, just the basics of Linux, and what